Before we get into our program, we'd like to mention some things that are coming up. As always, programs we put on are from suggestions from this crowd. So if you would like to see a presentation on anything, and I was just stopped, somebody asked me to put on that presentation about the German-speaking people from Zell and St. Unity. We've done it before, they'd like to re-see that, we'll probably redo that. That's not a problem. We talked to, let me think here, Power Rock Stone. I told you last time, Power Rock Stone is going to put on a presentation for us. There are 2 football fields away from the Mississippi River, and they went 350 feet below the Mississippi River. That's not a small creek, folks. That's a pretty good chunk of water coming down through there. It's a great story. It's a great story to hear them tell them where they sent about it. We were going to do it in August. They actually got tied up in a convention for August, so it'll be sometime this fall. We've got other people that are talking about putting on presentations. But anything that you'd like to see, please tell us. If we can get somebody to present it, we're glad to do it. We're also continuing our special events in honor of the Allosaurus being at the museum for a limited time. You're the only person that's ever asked. So we got the Allosaurus at the museum for a limited time, by 90 days. That dinosaur has been across the world in displays. It's in our museum right now. And we're having special events in connection to that. Let's see what it says. This Saturday, we have a paleo artist, Shane Falkers, who has done a painting on the dinosaurs in the museum. So if you've been in the museum and actually seen the dinosaurs, Shane has done the painting on those, and he will be bringing a special dinosaur with him to the presentation this Saturday. And it is not on display in the museum. It's the only time you'll get to see that dinosaur. And he will have it from 10 till 2 o'clock on Saturday, available to view. Also, there will be events for the kids, and he will be doing some painting on the dinosaur, and then he will let the kids do the painting. So that's this Saturday. And join us on Friday, July 31st for a paint and sip. You paint your own copy of one of the Audubon Burns illustrations. Tickets must be bought ahead of time, so contact the museum in regards to that. Paint and sip. That's something to do with wine. And I think there's painting or something. I think wine's the major part of that. Now for tonight's presentation, Gerry Klein and Gene Stolzer have poured their hearts and souls in researching and writing their book, River of Play. In this book, they explore the businesses, farms, schools, churches, and families that built River Aux Vases. You may know that as Stop Town. They do have copies of their book available for sale this evening, and they will be doing a book signing of those. With that said, I introduce to you Gerry Klein and Gene Stolzer. Thank you very much.
That kind of goes my ears. Okay, anyway, Gene liked the fact of Lori doing a book on Bloomfield, and she said, oh, we ought to do one on Stoptown. And Lori told her to contact me because I had already started one. So anyway, she did, and that's how we got to working on it. Now, how does Stoptown or River of Vases, like any other town, just keep, there'll be
Next slide.
okay, that's the downtown River of Vases. Okay, then there was, like all the other places, there was gardens, chickens, turn.
Next slide.
Okay, there's a small garden. Chickens. Okay, and of course butchery. Hunting. Next slide. Yes. Deer hunting. Fishing. Of course, you have to have a little recreation in there. We had the tractors. It was for the plow days. This is the red barn. This is the red barn. And there was a lot of wedding dances held there at the red barn. There was someone from St. Louis came down from KMOX, right? And he played there. Next slide. We had the square dancers. Where did you put those? Okay, the name of it was the St. Genevieve's Clover Leaves. They consisted of Buddy, Muir, and Beckley, along with their daughter Peggy Fowler, John and Ruth Fowler, and their daughter Kelly Peterson, Cletus and Benny Geck, Oliver and Rose Geck, Paul and Carol Kist, Jim and Cindy Ketty, and Glenn and the latest wife. Then, like all other towns, turned, okay, that we had the Lagioni. Okay. Then we had baseball. If you look at the shirts, you can see where it says Stop Down on it. And then besides that, there was also, whenever they played ball, sometimes they played at Falls Tavern. Okay. The ball team used walnuts for balls and fence rails for their bats. These were the people that donated the land for the church, and they donated. It was Philip and Caroline Yovers, and they gave 10 acres for $1. Okay, they said though there was a stipulation they had it had to be for the church, rectory, school, convent, and cemetery. The people began to build a one-stone rectory. Father Reese was appointed the first pastor. In 1864, they went ahead and they built a new church. Next slide. Okay, that is on the inside, the double doors of the church, and it says, "Thou shalt adore the Lord your God." The name of the church would be St. Philip's and James, taken from Zellweger Church in Germany. St. Philippus and Jacobus, the present Stations of the Cross. The Stations of the Cross came from the studio in Cologne, Germany. This was sure a lot easier to write than it is to talk. That's the first church. That was in 1864. And our first permanent pastor was Father Weiss. Joseph Beck was the stonemason on the church. Ray Stolzer remembered hearing that two Hungarian men rocked the church. He said that they wheeled stones way up high in a wheelbarrow. There was no money to hire someone, so the people designed and built the church themselves. Okay. Next slide. Okay, that's the stations that came from Cologne, Germany. That's the priest house. A new convent, was built for the school sisters. Next. The rectory was enlarged. Joseph Bowman and Felix Dorlock did the carpenter work. William Stolzer and Nick Yokers painted the outside and did the plastering. Alpenfuss brothers put on the roof. Next one. Okay, the parish hall was born. The parish hall was born in 1950s. Next slide. Next slide. Oh, this is the new record. That was the new record. Okay, that was the new rectory. Built in 1977. Now, that's the school building. It was built in 1910. The school and the convent were torn down in 1980. At that time, then the classrooms for the parish school of religion were held in the basement of the church, basement of the hall. That's the cemetery. You can see the flagpole and cross. There is, okay, that was the church after the renovation. And that's after the last renovation, what the inside of the church looked like. During time of the renovation, Mass was held in the parish hall. Now, we had many priests, of course, over time, and we do have a picture of almost every priest and information as far as when they were born, when they were ordained, and you know, where they're at now. Next. Oh, the school by the church was first called Morning Sun, River Public School, and finally St. Philip's and James Catholic School. The First Communion confirmation pictures, we were able to gather many of these pictures, but unfortunately there are too many to show tonight. School class pictures and graduation pictures, that's what I was saying. Sisters, we did extensive searching for each of the sisters who taught school and religion at St. Philip and James. We have pictures and information in the book on them. Many of the sisters of the most precious blood, sisters of St. Joseph and the Ursuline sisters. Go back one. Is it? Okay, Morning Sun. It was on Eisenbach's Bottom Road. And then Morning Shade was located on Mineth Road. Next. Okay, that's Cornwall Copper Mine. Oh, you skipped it. Okay, Rigdon School, which was located on Rigdon School Road about 2.5 miles from the heart of River Rock. We also had Cornwall Copper Mine School that was located in the Cornwall Copper Mines area, and we had the Free State School, which stood on the River of Church Road at the foot of the hill from the church on what is now the Stoll Farm. Someone burned that church down. Stories were told that a man's tracks were found in the mud from the school to his house, where he left his muddy boots on the porch. He was the director of the school board at the time, and his kids had to walk too far to school.
Can't believe it.
Okay, turn. Sorry. Okay. The bridges. That bridge was built from the 1800s. Built in 1914, it was moved to the Saline Creek Saddle Club grounds in Minot when the second bridge was built. Okay, that's the bridge most of you probably remember. It was completed in 1936 and dismantled in March of 2010 to make way for a new bridge, but we had to have a farewell to the bridge. Before the bridge was torn down, there was a farewell to the old bridge party. It was held on the bridge by having a fish fry along with some refreshments. Then we had to welcome the new bridge, which was completed in May of 2010 along with the resurfacing of Highway B. Before the bridge was opened, there was a welcoming to the new party bridge. It was also held on the bridge. Everyone was very grateful for the new road and bridge, and that it was finally open. That was Goddell's Swinging Bridge. It was built in 1927. Hank Goddell was 10 years old when he watched his father, Henry Goddell, and his brother, as well as Ray, Bill, and Frank, and Steve Stoll, Nick and Dan Kreitler, Tony Vogt, Ray and Ed Herman, and Frank Fritsch work on the bridge. When a lot of rain was forecast, the Goddells would leave their car parked on the other side and walk across the bridge from their house. Next. This is Nager's Swinging Bridge. Eugene Nager and his son Henry built a swinging bridge on the family farm near the Mill Creek, over the Mill Creek. Next. Okay. Probably the biggest crime article was the robbery at the Rogers Bank in St. Genevieve. After the robbery, the robbers drove out to Stoptown near the William Klein Jr. place. There was a shootout with the sheriff and police. After shooting Marshal Henry J. Drury, they got away in his car and were caught near Glover, Missouri. There was also, we did a section on old houses and property transactions. We didn't really list them because there's too many to list tonight. We also had post offices, postal carriers. Then we came across weather. There was thunderstorms, tornadoes, cyclones, and heavy snow. There was a tornado at Frank and John Fowler's place once. It leveled buildings. One heavy snowstorm was in February of 1979. As you can see from the picture, the driver had ran off the road in the deep snow.
I wonder who that was. Dennis Gould.
This is the right side of the B road. There were so many different, since this kind of helps you picture how town, Stocktown really was. So whenever you're heading towards Kaufman, you would have first pass the house, the Fredlin stop, the mill, the sawmill, and blacksmith shop, and then the creamery, which years later was the home of Smitty and Anna Yokers. And the way we did that, we got, like that was Nicholas Yokers, then it was rented to Dan Godell, and then later it was sold to Evans and Smitty Yokers. And you can see that's how we did all of them, so you could kind of keep up with the house. Then this would be the left side of B Road, heading in the same direction. You would first have passed the barn belonging to Edgar Nagger, Oscar Google's garage, a house, the store, and the tavern.
Okay, so then we did a section on farmer businesses. There was many out there, more than you would think. We had an auctioneer, Henry Bauer. We had Aunt Amy's hat shop, which was maybe Overly. Charlie Stout was the banker. There wasn't a bank, but if you needed money, you just went to him and asked for a loan. The barber shop was Wendell Jokers. He didn't really have a barber shop. He just had clippers, and whoever needed a cut, he would give it to them. Most of the time it was kids from school. Jenny Bowman was the wife of Alvin Bowman. She had a beauty shop in her house. And of course, Francis Bowman ran Bowman Kennels. He owned and operated that business, and he bred dogs and sold the pups there. So blacksmiths, there were quite a few. Frank Fowler had a blacksmith shop. It still stands behind the home of his grandson, Beaver and Dana Fowler. George Conyer was a blacksmith. On his death certificate, it listed him as a blacksmith. His shop was 1.5 miles south of Sherlock Mill. Nick Jokers was a blacksmith, and Henry Shrimp as well. Joe Jokers had a blacksmith shop out past the Red Barn. And then I think the building's still standing. William Stolzer was a blacksmith. That would have been Ray Stolzer's dad. And then Smitty, of course, this was his blacksmith shop, Smitty Jokers. And he bought that from Nicholas and Wilhelmina Jokers. And that stood up there across from the store and the tavern. And then Daniel Godell had one, and so did Oscar Gobro. And this was the Cabin Fever quilt shop. Degat ran that out of the log cabin in their backyard. She did classes on piecing and quilting quilts. And then we had some other businesses where excavators, carpenters, concrete finishers, painters. We've got a whole list of them. I'm trying to see if anybody stood out as something really major, but Irvin Jokers was a carpenter. He designed and, with the help of others, built a church hall. Irvin built things for many people, from oak barnwood or a glass window pane. And if he ever built something for you, he's got his name on the back of it, you can be sure. Ray Osler was a painter. He passed the profession down to his sons, Kenny and Marvin. Ray Stolzer, of course, was a big carpenter in trade for 60 years and built many of the homes in River Boggs. The creamery, as Gerry said, was the home of, later the home of Smitty and Anna Jokers. And there was a lot of doctors. We couldn't believe all the doctors we found. Probably had 20 names here. Even undertakers. On some of the death certificates we found, William Overly, Philip Vogt, and Lorena Overly's names were on there as undertaker. So there was a casket shop. William Overly ran that. He made burial boxes and farm wagons. It was located on what is now Stobtown Road. Now Ray Stolzer said when someone died, William had a stick with a mark on it. He used it to measure the body, so he knew what size to fill in the coffin. It was made of pine that cost $20. If walnut, it was $25. And if you wanted velour inside, it cost you $5 extra. His daughter Mamie would put the velour inside. So, funny story, Welton Gap told us this, that when they made the coffins at Stobtown, there was a funeral once, and the boards weren't nailed too well in the bottom of the coffin, so during the funeral procession, the body fell out. Another one was Lawrence Bowman, who was in charge of seeing that the graves got dug. He gave two of the diggers a bottle of whiskey to dig the grave one time, but they drank so much when they finished digging they couldn't get out. There was farm equipment, repairs and sales garages. Doug Famistock had one garage. Harry Werner worked on cars and farm equipment in that same building. It was also a filling station. The sign outside said, free air, water, and advice. And Peter Jokers had a car shop in that building. And Oscar Goldbrooks' shop, which was Dick's dad? No, uncle. What is it? What was it? Anything? No relation? No. So, anyway, he worked on cars and farm equipment. And Virgil Tucker had a fix-it shop and a gas station in the same location. It was called Tucker's Garage. He wanted Edgar Nager to go in partnership selling tractors. Thomas Swiftler had a trucking business. He owned a garage and service station in 1938. Ray Nager had his own business. He sold feed. It was called R.A. Nager Feeds in 1954 in a barn at his residence. He also sold seeds and fertilizer. And then Herb Kiss was the representative for Mormon Feeds. And then Willie Bowman took it over after Herb passed away. And then we get into the mills. Sherlock Mill was located on Stobtown Road by the Nagers, I believe. Is that right? Gene?
Yes.
Okay. And then the Stobtown Mill was located on Key Road across from the store. It was built in 1890. I believe we have a picture of that, number 40. Okay, here's your mill. And there was many owners of that building. As I said, it was built in 1890. Charlie Staub was the senior partner in Staub and Jokers with Nicholas. And then he owned it by himself, Nick did, and then Frank Jokers. And then Frank sold it in 1911 and moved to Imperial. Later he purchased a grain elevator that he converted to a flour mill. If you ever go down Main Street in Imperial, you can still see that mill. It has Jokers on the top of it. So So, flour mill of Joe Klein was, go ahead and turn. No, go back. So the brothers, Joseph and William Klein, had that mill, and then Saber Gek, and then Fridlin Staub, and then Charles Nager, and then Edgar. He bought the building. He too used it as a warehouse. Edgar attached the two buildings together and added a roof over the dock. If you remember this is where he parked his truck. The building was torn down by Jim Nager, Edgar's son, around 1990, 100 years after it was built. Next. The Cornwall Copper Mines was located on Copper Mine Road, and work began here in 1876. Bill Tucker said that his dad rented some land around the copper mines. When he was young, his family lived up on top of the hill. Moonshine was made there. There was a village with a company store, a post office, and 10 to 12 houses. Copper was shipped out by steam engine to the train at Weingarten. Joe Stolzer, Jake Bowman, and Ed Kiss worked at the mines at one time. The mine closed in 1918. Judy Grine and Vic Gobro once went into some of the tunnels at the copper mines. They got lost, and they felt air, so they found their way out. Do you remember that bit? Then we had the Marble Quarry, which was over on Cape Road. It was a pretty big business going on for a while. It developed around 1880 and it ran until 1893. It was then rehabilitated in 29, but we couldn't find anything about it after that. We had restaurants quite a few restaurants here, so you can turn that to, that was a picture of the copper piles from the copper mine. This was the Winds of Meadowview restaurant. It was a pretty classy place. And Mary Ann Duffy Nager designed the building, and her son Les built it. It closed around 95. No, it opened in 95, closed around 2002. And then the property and the restaurant was built by DePaul University of Chicago. They brought in some tigers, and that ran for a while. And now it's up for sale again. So then we had the Copper Mine Saloon and Restaurant. Penny Bowman and Eric ran that. Boy, what a time we had there. So it replaced the former business of Puff's Tavern. Penny and Eric opened in 2005, and Harry Williams leased it from Penny and Eric in 2006. Oh, I'm sorry, I got ahead of myself, I think. Just hold on. And then he closed the doors in 2007. Diane Corky-Dury and Dave Roth opened it back up from 2009 to 2011. That's it, folks. No, here it is. Oh. So then we got into the saloons and taverns. So you can probably go ahead. This was Harry's Tavern, Harry Nager. If you remember that, you can see it on the side. It says Uncle Harry's Tavern. I love the old signs, the Stag, Shell, Budweiser, Coca-Cola. So you had Charles Staub ran a tavern, and then Sagan Kiefer, Nicholas Jokers, William Boat, Francis Greco, William Sexar, a couple more Grecos, Nicholas Stolzer, and then you had Lawrence Bowman, and Carl Bowman moved back from St. Louis after the death of his father, Lawrence, in 1934. He took over the tavern and filling station. He operated the business for 12 years until his death in 46, and then Amy O'Brien took it over for Hilda in 46. And this was Harry's. Before I get to this one, Jim Nager purchased the tavern from Hilda in 1965. It was then called Nagger Tavern. He ran it till '67. Next. This was Ronnie Joker's, and he took over the tavern from Jim, and once again the name changed. It was now called Ronnie's Tavern. He ran the place until it was tore down in '69. Dale Brooks said the night the two-story tavern closed, everything was free. There was a jukebox and everyone danced. Had they known how rotten the floor was, they would never dance so hard. As they were tearing the building down, part of it fell on the garage next door and Dale fell through the floor. Jim Hager built a new tavern in its place. Ronnie Jokers continued to operate it until 1974. Dennis Foff ran the tavern for several years after Jim. And then in '77, Dennis built a new tavern across the highway. It was called Foff's Tavern. There he sold gas and had shooting matches. Anna Mae Eastman and Martha Mary Gap worked for him. In 2001, Dennis closed the doors, and that's when Penny Bowman and Eric Sonicson converted Foff's into a bar and restaurant. And the building sat vacant after they were out of it, and then they turned it into the River Aux Vases winery. Unfortunately, it wasn't in business for too long. The business has now been restored into a beautiful home. If you've ever seen it, it's gorgeous. So we had quite a few sawmills. There was Bee Bluff Sawmill, which was one right in Scouttown. And Oregon Jokers, which was, Cliff, was that your great-grandpa or grandma? Yeah. And then Oregon ran that, and then Francis moved it and the steam engine down to the home place. He sought out all the lumber for Jake Bowman's big barn that stands today out in Bowman, just before Jambic Gardens. And then you had Herb Schwartz's sawmill. It was on their farm. He sawed out lumber when people needed it, and now Tom Schwartz takes over his father's sawmill. And then Joe Bobro had one on the Mill Creek area. In '35, a 6,000 pound boiler exploded, which wrecked the sawmill. Luckily, the 12 men who worked there were at lunch and nobody was hurt. Severin Geck ran the Scouttown mill next to the flour and blacksmith shop. And then we come to the stores. Philip Staub, who was Charles' dad, owned a store on the Stoll farm off of River Aux Vases Church Road. According to Ray and Wendell Stoll, as well as Ray Stolzer, it was located on the hill as you entered their driveway. Charles Staub and Nicholas Jokers, Ray Stolzer said this store was on the Philip Jokers farm across from St. Philip and James Church. He said Charles and Nicholas ran it at different times. Next, this was Charles Staub's store. He bought that property from John and Alfred Sherlock in the middle of River Vases. In 1875, he began merchandising. He built this store in 1885. Okay, he built a new store in 1885. Frank Staub had to take over the business when his father Charles died in 1925. Next. This was, this was the three generations. So it was Charles, Frank, and Fridlin, which Fridlin was in fat, right? Next. This was a anniversary sale that they had, and people came from all over. And Dean Bowman took this picture one time with him and got a lot of people to try to identify some of the people in the picture. He got quite a few, but we never had all of them because they were from St. Genevieve and all over. So after Charles Nagger took over the store after Fat Stop did, and that was in 1945, and then Edgar Nagger and Fred Stork purchased it from Charles. They were co-owners for several years. Next, this was Nager's store. So you can see they just changed it from Stock Store to Nager's store. And this was the inside of the store. Isn't that cool? Edgar and Evelyn. So, that's Edgar with his truck. So I have to tell you a little funny story. When I first got married and moved out here with Randy, he told me to go up to the store one day and get some bologna. Okay, so I went up there and I told him I told Edgar, I said I want a pound of bologna. Okay, so he takes his big old knife and a big old roll of bologna and he slices it off, you know. Of course, a few little pieces fell off and that had to go to the dog. And I'm like, okay, and then he took his paper and he wrapped it all up. If you guys remember that, I did that string and hanging there. Well, I paid for it and I got home and opened it up. And Randy said, well, how much did you get? And I said, a pound. He said, well, there's only like 2 or 3 slices here. Well, they were about this thick and this thin, and you know. So that was kind of good. I enjoyed that. But so then next, Edgar did a lot of hauling. He hauled livestock and feed and anything. What really was in that store? Robertson's. He went to Robertson's and found parts for farmers or a piece for your toilet, anything you needed. And then he also bought lottery tickets over in Illinois. You could get them from him because they weren't selling them in Missouri yet. So this was Woodland Studio, and that's Paul and Carol Kiss there. And they ran that from 1990 to 2001. They did photography in that little studio. And Joanne Hammer also was employed with them at one time. And then Stacy Linder took over the business from 2004 to 2007. So the rest of the book was, we put the current businesses in there, which I'm not going to go through all of them right now. But you had Southbound, I will name them, but I won't, tell who has what. But you got Southbound Fuel, you had JW Buildings, you had Earthworks, of course, which is a family-owned and operated business of Kevin and Aaron Thierry. And Kevin, if I have this wrong, forgive me, because this was like 10 years ago. So, father and son. Quarries located on Ice Bottom Road. It began in 1997 with the operation of chopping stone only. The operation was expanded in 2003 and 4. At the time of this printing, they had 7 different plants in operation, and it has now massively grown, offering products to builders, architects, masons, and landscapers, and retail in the United States, Canada, and China. And there was probably more by now. Fisher Quarries on hauling, of course Bob, and his brother Hansi started it, is that correct? Francis. So Francis, and then their residents of River Bottoms, and that's located in St. Mary's and Highway Z. Well, since I started saying them all, I'm just gonna go ahead. Southbound Fuel, owned by Bob and Denise Prieshopper. They opened that business in 2004, and it's thriving. JW Buildings was ran by Mike and Tammy Friedman. They opened in 2007, and I believe Todd Byington works out of that building now. Denise's Styling Shop. Denise is the owner of that. She opened in '87, and that was located is located on Highway B. Kona Ice, Wayne and Mary Jokers. They sell tropical shaved ice. Cave Vineyard was owned by Marty and Mary Jo Strushin. Unfortunately, it's closed down now, so that's sad, but that's the way it goes. Probst Masonry, Dale and Mary Ann bought out the masonry business from H&B Masonry, where Dale previously worked as supervisor. Sons Pat and Steve work alongside with him. Dale erected a building out off of B Road now, and they have like 3 buildings out there. So, Tiger Ridge, Joe Scott purchased that, and from the Windsor Meadowview Restaurant and Tiger Sanctuary. They are also up for sale. Ground Getaway, they had nightly rentals, beautiful places, 3 different places there called Tiger Bee Lodge, Tiger Den Lodge, and Tiger Point Lodge, and that's also for sale. And of course we got Mike Nagger with Nagger Forest Products. It's owned by him and Jill in 1988. Mike purchased a portable sawmill to begin a lumber business. In 1993, he set up a permanent sawmill near his home. He did logging as well. Mike incorporated in 1992, becoming Nagger Forest Products. I'm sorry, Mike. So that's it. There's a lot of other pictures we would have loved to put in here, but we were limited to time, and could have said a lot more. But here you see Earthworks. I just took this picture the other day because I wanted an updated one, and I wanted to thank Kevin for sponsoring us and all the crew out there at Earthworks. And it's a huge operation back there. You can just drive by and look down at it, drive that ice road. It's amazing. So Gerry Klein would like to thank Dick Millinger of Litterest and Robert Wolf of St. John Music Learning Center for inviting us here. And again, to Kevin at Earthworks for sponsoring us. We'd also like to thank all the individuals who shared information and pictures with us. We couldn't have put this book together without you. And last of all, thanks to all of you who've come tonight. We appreciate it very much.
We want to thank Gerry and Jean for putting this together. Also want to let you know this is the largest crowd we've ever had at a speaker series. So thank you very much.